What's up, y'all? This is Hammer here again, back with another video. And today I'm gonna be talking about the FBA movement, foundational Black Americans, like that. And in case anyone may not know, right? The FBA movement was largely started off by Tariq Nasheed. It essentially is nothing more than a copycat of the ADOS movement. And for those who don't know, ADOS is, Americans and Slaves. Now, for a lot of people who may not be familiar with these terms, these are essentially a group of people online, I will say a subgroup of Black Americans online who, want to have a unique designation for themselves, which is fine. But people need to remind themselves that in real life, in the mainstream, right, the vast majority of Black Americans out here in the real world are not calling themselves FBA and ADOS. I will say the average Black American is wake up in the morning, going to work, going to school, doing what they got to do for their families. They may watch BET or watch Roland Martin or watch some of the mainstream Black American networks or maybe Breakfast Club, right? They have a pro-Black mentality. I think Black Americans in general, by default, do have a Pan-African mentality, right? It may not be to the level of Umar, but they typically do have this natural instinct to advocate for Black people globally. That's one thing I will agree with O'Shea, that because Black Americans did go through so much, whenever they see a Black person being wronged anywhere around the globe, they have this natural inclination, right? So keep that in mind. That is the mainstream. But the FBA, the ADOS thing, that's another thing. But I'm focusing on the FBA because this is the one that's been getting the most attention recently, right? The FBA is a new group online that's been formed by Tariq Nasheed, aka Foundational Black Americans, right? And the whole point of him doing this was that he felt that in order for Black Americans to get the reparations, and I know some FBAs are going to come to China and say, well, that's not what it's about. Yes, it is, okay? Before this whole FBA thing, Tariq Nasheed was very much pro-diaspora. He was like any other ordinary Black American, pro-Black people globally. When Tariq Nasheed saw the reparations grift, right? And guys, when I say the reparations grift, what I mean is this movement online by Black Americans who are demanding reparations. And let me just go ahead and say this, okay? I believe in reparations of Black Americans. I support reparations of Black Americans. And keep this in mind that I've said multiple times on my channel that my family and me and my family essentially immigrated here from West Africa, particularly Cameroon, right? So any reparations done for Black Americans, I will not receive it, right? So I'm not supporting reparations because of self-interest. I support it because of the right thing to do, right? But the reason why I had a problem with these movements online is because I knew what they were. They were grifts. Anyone who knows, geopolitics, international law understands that any reparations claim, right, would have to be done using nation states or using international institutions. Anything outside of that is just a grift. And so when I saw the ADOS coming up with the reparations thing, cut the check, and I saw the FBA with the cut the check, I knew what it was. It was just a grift. Because if these people are not serious. And what I started to notice is that just like the ADOS, classification, right? The FBA started to employ tactics in which they started to cut themselves off, or separate themselves from the entire Black diaspora. Now, of course, many of these people will say that's not true, but if you listen to a live show, listen to the conversations, that's what they were doing. Now, this is not everyone, but this is largely the sentiment. And also keep in mind that these people do not represent the majority of Black Americans. Keep that in mind. So when Tariq will hop on his live streams on panels talking about how, well, the reason we can't get reparations, family, is because of the tethers. I laugh, right? Because I know what it is. I know what it is, right? You found this energy online of reparations. Most of the people who are behind these movements don't know, the legalities it will take to actually get there, not only on a state level, but on an international level. And so they're using this to gain clout, but they don't actually know what to do. They don't actually know the work that needs to be done, right? And as a way to avoid any sort of criticism, what do? They try to cut off the entire black diaspora and say, don't listen to them. They're a bunch of tethers. Family, we got to stay over here. So it's funny to me. But the reason why I'm talking about it is because a lot of people were calling out Tariq Nasheed for his tactics and his behavior and talking about how what he's doing essentially is grifting and that his behavior and his tactic of essentially trying to cut off the diaspora, isolate black Americans as a tactic to quote unquote cut the check or get the reparations was going to backfire. And the number one reason it was going to backfire because one thing I have said, and this is something I've told the FBAs, the groups online, that look, any reparations movement for black Americans will not be successful unless you have nation state behind you or you're working through international institutions. All of the examples you guys are using, whether it's the Japanese or the Jews, these people had nation states. The Japanese had a state of Japan, advocating on their behalf. The Jews had multiple nation states, whether it's the United States or many European governments advocating on their behalf. America is still sending money towards Israel even now, right? And because America is a hegemonic power, not only do the Jews get state power, they also get America being able to use international institutions to their advantage. This is how Israel is able to avoid all of these, is able to get away from all of these international laws they keep breaking. But for you to think, Tariq, and all of these ADOS, FBA, that you are going to cut yourself, have no allies, no partners, no supporters, and especially cut yourself off from the diaspora, and you think that as an underclass group on your own in America, you're somehow going to get trillions of dollars of reparations from the hegemonic power of the world, that's crazy to me. Everything black Americans have gotten historically in the United States was done through help or through allies or people coming to their support. Now, those people may have done it for their own interest, that's fine, but once again, they didn't do it by themselves. Slavery coming to an end was not black Americans revolting and overthrowing the U.S. government. The end of slavery the end of slavery for black Americans is not like what happened in Haiti, where they just kicked the whites. That's not what happened. They didn't kick the whites out. You had northern whites that had to fight southern whites, and for them to win that war, for you to gain your freedom. If that would not have happened, you would have still remained there for a pretty long time. All right. And then we saw how the moment the war came to an end and you had the compromises that happened between the North and the South, what did they do? The moment that the North betrayed black Americans and essentially threw you right back in the hands of the white Southerners, you essentially went from being legally slaves, right, to essentially being put into slavery again, but in a different name, Jim Crow. Even when it came to civil rights, right? Civil rights. Look, black Americans have always fought for civil rights. The only reason why it was able to succeed, right, specifically, after World War II, was largely because America was engaged in the Cold War. The Soviet Union and the Chinese were ruthless about using, the images of black Americans being lynched and hosed down as a way to apply pressure on the collective Anglo-Saxons. And America got tired of this being used, so they had to relinquish. See, once it became in America's national state interest to branch your civil rights, and it happened. This is also the reason why the moment they gave you civil rights, they then went on to undermine it. Whether it's to put sex on the civil rights side, whether it's to give almost the majority, I would say almost 80% of affirmative action to white women. That's the game plan. Nothing you get in this country, because America is a hegemonic power, and you're an underclass. You do not get anything in this country, especially the underclass, without allies. Even if I put the black diaspora to the side, even on your own here in the United States, everything you've gotten was to essentially having white allies for the most part. And what I'm telling you, what I'm telling the is that the reason why the movement is slowly starting to dissipate is because what me and many others have been saying is starting to come to pass, which is that, look, you're not going to be able to get the powerfulest country in the world to dish out trillions of dollars to you in reparations if you have no leverage. Every other time you've gotten the U.S. government to do something for you, had white allies. In this situation, you don't even have white allies because although you may have white liberals who may pontificate about reparations. Trust me, not a single white liberal wants to see the taxes go up because they want to see trillions of dollars go towards Black Americans. Because fundamentally, although they're willing to talk about systemic white supremacy, they're not willing to change it. So in this situation, the only allies you would have would be the Black diaspora and other Black nation states. But that's who you want to cut off. Now, when you had the situation, the reparations bill in California, and I talked about how, hey, even if they somehow get that through, right, you're going to have other non-Black people who are going to undermine that, right? You, of course, had the FBAs and them. Well, you know what, Tether? You don't know what you're talking about. Cut the check. All we got to do is march and demand they cut the check. With what leverage do you have? Tagging yourself as FBA and ADOS and saying cut the check, that's not leverage. I'm sorry. Okay? At least when it came to Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, they understood geopolitics. They understood how to leverage the geopolitical conflict America was in with the Soviets and the communists as a way to apply pressure as government. That's what kills me about this conflict. It's that their forefathers that were able to achieve so much did not use this tactic. Their forefathers, whether it's Muhammad Ali or Malcolm X or MLK, understood the importance of having allies, understood the importance of having coalitions, understood the importance of using geopolitics. Okay, especially you saw what happened during the Vietnam War and how they used that situation to gain international sympathy and apply international pressure on America. They understood the game, the geopolitical game, because when you're an underclass population, the only tool you have is using other states or using the international community event. That's what you have, and maybe some allies within your own nation, but that's only going to take you so far. And so what I'm starting to see now, the reason why I made this video is because I'm starting to notice how a lot of the people who are part of the FBA movement are starting to become quiet now. And what I mean by that is the enthusiasm and the energy is starting to gone, because they're starting to realize that what me and by the way, other Black Americans were saying this too, was starting to come to pass, right? That you're not going to be able to cut yourself from the diaspora and go at it alone against a hegemonic power by yourself. That's insane, right? Recently, Jason Black did a live stream, right? In which he talked about how, and the title of the live stream was, why Israel matters for Black reparations, right? And of course, Black Americans were mad in the chat. Jason Black is also hot on the whole FBA thing. And I want to stress, right? FBA is not the same as Black America. I want to separate the two. There's a difference. The vast majority of Black Americans in real life have never heard of this, don't know what this is. Most of them are, more than likely watch BT or Breakfast Club. That's the mainstream of Black America. This is what I call the periphery online. So keep this in mind, okay? I was referring to a specific group. Jason Black had the live stream last night, right? And of course, he was talking about how, when it comes to the Israeli situation, how Jews are getting so much protection and how they just haven't said a word, how the media is offending them. And of course, Black Americans in the chat were angry at Jason Black at some point. And I don't blame them because, Jason, you essentially have been telling a lot of these FBAs that they can essentially go against the powerfulest country in the world by themselves with no allies. And all they got to do is say, cut the check, and money will start rolling. And people like me and others who essentially called you out and said that was not going to happen, we got to tag as being shills or quote-unquote tethers. So now that you're starting to realize that was right, you're trying to walk back. You're trying to walk back your comments. Now all of a sudden, geopolitics and coalitions matter. Isn't that right, Jason Black? And what's so funny is that a lot of the Black Americans in the chat were angry, and I agree with them, because you kind of betrayed them, Jason Black. You led them down this FBA path thinking that they could do it by themselves as an underclass group. Now that you'll come back and say, oh, well, actually, we may need some allies. Yeah, they're like, wait, what? You told us that we didn't need any allies. You told us that we could do it by ourselves. Now you're telling us that we need to allow ourselves to make larger coalitions. That's why even in mid-live streams, Jason had to admit that, a lot of them were angry in the chat. They weren't feeling it. They weren't feeling. And it's not just in Tariq Nasheed too. You know, Tariq began his whole thing about how we gotta delineate. We gotta delineate from the tethers, right? We gotta delineate. But after what happened in California, after these whites let him know real quick that you have no allies, you have no power. Once he realized that you can't do it by yourself, all of a sudden now Tariq is talking about, well, you know, we're not referring to everyone. You know, we rock with our brothers and sisters across the diaspora. Tariq, stop it. And the reality of the conversation is right. See, I have enough intelligence to understand that he is just an enigma within the Black American community. But unfortunately, and this is what I fear the most, is a lot of African Americans, a lot of Black diasporans who may not understand that FBA and ADOS is not the mainstream in Black America. They're going to come across these people and they're going to have a bad taste in the mouth when it comes, or I guess a bad representation of Black Americans. And then they're going to spew that out, and this is how the cycle of hatred begins. So that's why I go out of my way to make it very clear. Say, look, don't put them in the same category as Black Americans. They're a unique peripheral group online. And see, this is when Tariq Nasheed's FBA thing really came to an end. Tariq Nasheed recently had a live stream in which, of course, and ironically, that the thing was a black people who were calling him and calling him out, saying, "Yo, you have not given us this reparations thing, right? You promised us that if we cut ourselves from the diaspora and we become this, you know, independent, I guess, underclass group, we could take on the hegemonic United States by ourselves." You can't get the cut the check to become a reality, but what you want to do is raise money for what? A documentary about hip hop, Tariq? This is what I'm talking about. So when he got called out, right? Do you know what Tariq said? Tariq literally said on his streams that Black Americans are native to the United States. Let me say this again. As Tariq is starting to be called out for his shenanigans and his behavior, and how this whole promise he gave to the Black Americans who follow him, that if you just cut yourself in the diaspora, if you cut from the tethers and you join me, all they got to do is make a bunch of rallies, say cut the check, and somehow the United States, who treats us as the underclass, is going to dish us out trillions of dollars while we have no leverage. Right? That's what he said. When people start to call him out and say, hey, yo, that's not what's happening, what does he come out and say? Well, actually, you guys should not even criticizing us, right? Because we are Native Americans. We're native to this country. And see, Tariq, this is when you lost all credibility. It's gotten so bad. But now you got white folks making fun of FBA online. Because you guys are going around saying that you're Native Americans, everyone is now posting pictures of Pocahontas with a Black American face. And this is what kills me. Because I know the vast majority of Black Americans are not out here saying they're native to the United States. The vast majority of Black Americans innately have a Pan-African spirit. I would say the vast majority of Black Americans tend to sympathize with Black diaspora. But unfortunately, because of the loud minority like FBA and ADOS, now you have created a proxy for other groups to attack them. Now you're going to have white folks going around talking about, see, all these folks talking about reparations are saying that they're native to America. That's why we shouldn't take them seriously. Don't you understand how you're hurting your own movement? Now when Black Americans go out here and actually advocate for reparations for real, all whites got to do is start, you know, claiming FBA and say, well, these FBAs are talking about how you're native to this country. Do you agree with that? This is what I'm talking about. And I am starting to see how a lot of the people in the FBA ADOS cloud are starting to realize how this shit was not going to work. Now, folks are going to ask me in the chat, well, you know what, Hammer? If that's not the answer, what's the answer? I've said it multiple times. Because Black America is an underclass group, right? The only way really forward is to have leverage. And the only way you have leverage is by having nation states backing you, or I guess being able to utilize international institutions. Recently, and this is something Tariq has not even covered. Recently, there was a summit, there was a conference that happened in Accra, Ghana, in which you had the African Union and CARICOM, right, who came there, and they were gonna make a joint effort to try to demand for reparations, right? For in regards to slavery and everything, right? Why is this important? These are nation states coming together. The African Union has what, 54 countries? CARICOM has what, I think 20 to 22, around a number. So you have what, close to maybe 70 to 80 countries possibly together, coming together to file and demand for reparations. See, because these are nation states coming together, they're able to apply pressure not only in regards to the European state power and the Western powers in terms of, formally asking for this for compensation, but it can also go to international institutions too. What is the UN? What is the ICC? And say, hey, slavery was a crime against humanity, right? Things like that. It gives them a legal foundation to start from. This is how you move the ball forward. You get state powers behind you. You start using international institutions. And although Western governments have been able to skirt these things because the West is in decline, and by the way, we're seeing this happening with the Israeli conflict, right? As much as America has been able to skirt international laws, and that's true, right? The pressure is so intense now that even they are starting to quote unquote give in, right? Whether it's agreeing to some humanitarian pause in Gaza, whether it's Joe Biden talking about how we need to have some more condition in regards to Israeli aid. So the international pressure from the international institutions is so intense that even America, the hegemonic power America, is having to put some guardrails and restrictions in regards to support for Israel. Keep that in mind. And you have this happening right now, but he's right. You don't see a single FBA or ADOS talking about the conference that just happened in Ghana, where you had nation states from Africa and the Caribbean coming together, formally saying we're going to work together, right, as nation governments to formally seek reparations. And we're going to use international institutions. This is when the diaspora, if you wanted me to take FBA seriously, this is when I should have seen Tariq Nasheed at. If I would have seen Tariq Nasheed in that conference with all of those other nation states shaking the hands of the president of Ghana, shaking the hands of the head of the African Union, shaking the hands of all these governments to say, hey, well, we're gonna do a collective bid. So you guys will come together with the African states, with the Caribbean states, and I, Tariq, and others will represent the black diaspora, and together we can have an international claim, a collective claim internationally towards the European Western states, while also utilizing the international institutions. If I was seeing Tariq doing that, then I would take FBA serious. Okay, you know what? Now they're moving in the right direction. Recently, there was even a United Nations, I think, representative who came to America to investigate police brutality and racism in the United States. This is how you leverage. This is how you play the game of power when you're an underclass group. You leverage others. You try to get support from other nations. You try to leverage international institutions. You try to make coalitions. This is what the Jews have been able to do. Okay? They're able to, quote unquote, go to the West and, quote unquote, make alliances with Western European states together in support of the diaspora. That's even how they were able to help establish the state of Israel. The Zionists were very much involved with nation states, European nation states, Western nation states, and using international institutions to get what they wanted. Until I see this from ADOS and FBA, these movements align, it's essentially over. And one thing I'm starting to notice is that I'm starting to slowly see how more and more of the Black Americans who hopped on these movements are starting to realize what all of this was. It was nothing more than a grift to really allow the people who will lead these movements to benefit off of it, to make money, to make a bunch of symbolic statements, symbolic moves, while cutting you off from diaspora and while leaving you in a weaker position. Okay? But with that being said, what I will say before I go is this. Once again, guys, okay? The answer is very clear. If you're serious about reparations, you should have been in that conference in Accra, Ghana, when you had those African and Caribbean states that were there a couple of weeks ago, talking about how they're going to make a collective bid for reparations using state power, using international solutions, right? That's where you should have been. You should have been there, hugging, holding hands, making connections, doing that so that as they make these bids, as these nation states make these bids, the African American diaspora also has representatives there too. As they're going to these European Western states making these bids, as these nation states are going to UN or to these international institutions making these bids, African Americans have representation, right? The black diaspora has the representation there alongside. See, when you do that, then you have leverage because now you're not coming to America and European powers as just an underclass group. You're coming as part of a broader coalition of nation states. You're coming as part of a broad coalition of states who are also utilizing international system, international institutions. That gives you leverage, especially during a time when Western powers are trying to win Africa on the side in this geopolitical conflict against Russia and China. This is the perfect time for you to align with the diaspora. The perfect time. Anything outside of what I just laid in this video, it's a waste of time. And let me get this shit right. What also gets me angry about the situation is that I know so many intelligent black Americans that understand this. There are so many black Americans that understand the game of power, that understand how, hey, you need leverage. You need state power. You need to have access to these international institutions, right? You have to play geopolitics. All these things are needed. If you are a stateless people, because let's be honest here, black Americans are stateless people. Yes, they have American citizenship, but let's keep it real. America does not really honor the citizenship like that. You're essentially a stateless people. When you're stateless people, you don't have adequate representation. What you do is seek nation states who are willing to ally with you or international institutions, right? That's what the Zionists did. When the Zionists were working with the British, and the British was willing to help them establish Israel within what in East Africa, they understood that, hey, because we don't have a state, we have to work with nation states. We have to work with international powers. And this is how they were able to use Western governments, international institutions to establish a state. Like the formula is already there. Anything outside of this, anything outside of quote unquote linking up with black nations around the world, linking up with international solutions, anything outside of that is a waste of time. And it will always end the same way, right, Tariq? It will end up with you guys being nothing more than some fringe peripheral group online with hashtags talking about cut the check and nobody takes you seriously. And it gets to a point in which you guys start saying that you guys are native to this country. And once it gets to that point, nobody really starts taking you seriously. And that's the reason why the FBA and the AOS movement is over. Because it was never serious to begin with. And keep this in mind that they don't represent the black American population. They're nothing more than a peripheral group online that essentially came to an end. And in my opinion, I believe the FBA thing was really done when Tariq Nasheed essentially showcased that he didn't actually have a strategy to get reparations, and that he did not understand geopolitics and nation states and everything. Once that was established, he was done. But what really put the nail in his coffin was when he started talking about how black Americans are native to this country. That's what he was done for real. But with that being said, yo, I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that. Tell me in the chat what you guys think about the bill, if you agree or disagree with. But yeah, these movements are done. I've already laid out to you what the path is. Any movement for reparations for black Americans that does not align with what I just said is nothing more than a grift, and it will end up crashing in flames. With that being said, like, share, subscribe, hammer out.